TJ Jones, we here. State of the Saints podcast, top notch, everything's top class. Know the play before they snap it. Going forward, never backward. Mr. TJ Jones getting it done.
What's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones. And yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. And I apologize in advance if I'm lagging. I don't know what the heck is going on with StreamYard on tonight, but I really do appreciate your time, no matter where you are, wherever you may be, no matter if you're watching this at home, at work, on the go, at your mom and them house. Really do appreciate it. On this edition, we're going to be talking about free agency, as it is just around the corner. And of course, this is an exciting time for a lot of teams, because there are some free agents that could come in to help teams around the National Football League, and the New Orleans Saints are going to be looking for some free agents. On this edition, we're going to be focusing on the running back position. And of course, we're going to be taking your questions and comments. One of the most interactive podcasts out there is the State of the Saints podcast. Shouts out to everybody in the chat right now. Very, very simple. If you just rolled up on this channel, all you have to do is put your comments in the chat. Very, very simple. We read your comments. We read your questions. We're very interactive once again. So let's go ahead and get started, because I'm excited about it. Free agency. Ladies and gentlemen, free agency. And usually around this time, if you're a Saints fan, you're not really too excited about this. And why are you not excited about it? It's very, very simple. It's because the Saints don't really have no money to deal with, right? They ain't got no bread. They ain't got none of that Skrilla. So you already know they not trying to get no highly touted free agents around this time. But at the end of the day, the Saints could play in free agency this time around. So there are some names that are out there that the Saints could sign if they really want to. It's that plain. It is that simple. But we're once again focusing on the running back position. There are some names that are going to be free agents. According to reports, Kenneth Walker will be a unrestricted free agent, as he and the Seattle Seahawks could not come to terms on a deal. We know that Kenneth Walker III is coming off a Super Bowl performance, a Super Bowl MVP performance, and he's going to test free agency. And you also have running backs like Travis Etienne, a Louisiana native, Clemson Tiger, former Clemson Tiger, Jacksonville Jaguars, will test free agency as well. And the question has been going around, should the New Orleans Saints go after a running back in free agency? We all know where I stand when it comes to the running back position. We all know where I stand when it comes to what the Saints need to do, or I won't say what they need to do, but, what they should be thinking about doing, which is drafting Jeremiah Love. But we have heard the reports. We've seen the combine. There's a strong chance that Jeremiah Love will not be available for the New Orleans Saints at number 8, based on his combine performance, his measurables, and him being something, I don't know, a generational talent. So what do you do if you are the New Orleans Saints? What do? You go after maybe a free agent running back that can go alongside Alvin Kamara, who you have for at least one more season, and you try to make things happen by fixing your offensive line and getting somebody that can run the football and maybe be a home run hitter and be able to help out Tyler Shuck. So I'm focusing on Travis Etienne and Kenneth Walker for 2 reasons. Number one, they're going to be available at the start of free agency. And number 2, they would be good complementary backs for not only Tyler Shuck, but Alvin Kamara. And if something was to happen to Alvin Kamara, these guys have starting experience, and they can be able to do some things. Now, and what they do does not take away from what the New Orleans Saints have in a running back room. when you look at Kenneth Walker, I was on social media today, and shouts out to Ralph Marlboro of Saints Happy Hour. He says the fact that the Seattle Seahawks were willing to allow a Super Bowl MVP running back to walk is very, very alarming. And, I feel it's not very alarming because we know that teams aren't really trying to pay running backs like that unless they are generational talents, guys that never have to leave the field unless they need a Gatorade break. Guys like Saquon Barkley doesn't have to leave the field. Christian McCaffrey doesn't have to leave the field. Bijan Robinson doesn't have to leave the field. Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't have to leave the field. These are the type of running backs that teams are paying top dollar for. So, guy like Kenneth Walker, who runs for 1,000 yards, 200 yards receiving, averaging 17 receiving yards a game, good player, but am I going to invest heavily in the running back position for Kenneth Walker when I need him to get off the field on third downs? He's not necessarily a generational talent. I'm not going to do that. And neither am I going to do that for Travis Etienne. Now, some people would say, well, if those teams don't want to do it, why in the hell should the New Orleans Saints invest money in it? Well, here's why. Because the Saints are in a different type of situation. Once again, I mentioned Alvin Kamara. I mentioned him. He is going to demand $18 million. If you were to let Alvin Kamara go, you would lose $18 million. So you at least have Alvin Kamara, who is a dynamic running back, running in between the tackles, catching the ball out of the backfield, all-purpose back on your team for at least one more season. So those guys can be a 1-2 punch for Alvin Kamara. It doesn't take away from what Alvin does. Alvin doesn't take away from what Travis or Kenneth Walker would be able to do, and it would be a really good fit. So do I think that the New Orleans Saints need to pursue these guys? Well, it depends. It depends on if the New Orleans Saints feel that they're not going to draft Jeremiah Love, or they feel like they won't be able to get a future all-purpose back in this draft, where some people would say that this is not a very strong draft at running back. So maybe the New Orleans Saints would probably try to go and get one in free agency. So if the New Orleans Saints were to get one of these running backs, well, how much would they be willing to pay? Well, if you look at Kenneth Walker, and according to some reports, they say that he can get between $12 to $16 million. And if you're Travis Etienne, his market is around $8 million, which is pretty average for a running back. So Kenneth Walker, to me, this is just me. The fact that he is not a every down back, he is not a guy that is a complete game changer. Like, he's a really good running back and has been in the league for a long time. But are you winning a championship if you add Kenneth Walker? Is he running for 1,600 yards? Is he winning a rushing title? Probably not. Going to give you some really good, solid games. You're going to be able to lean on him during times when maybe the defense that you're going up against stops your aerial attack, but not to a point where you feel like your bread is going to be buttered because Kenneth Walker is on your team. And this is not a knock on Kenneth Walker. What I'm saying is, if you're going to invest that type of bread, $12 to $16 million, they better not leave the field. I'm talking the running back position. But you can add guys to the team to be that 1-2 punch for Alvin, and I think everything will work out. Now, regardless to what guy you get, rather it's Etienne or Kenneth Walker, you're going to have yourself a really good, solid running back. As I look at their stats, and I'm going to go ahead and read it out as I have them on the screen here. You got Kenneth Walker, who played in 17 games last season, 221 attempts for 1,021 yards, averaging 4.6 yards a carry, 5 rushing touchdowns. Once again, 31 receptions, 282 yards, and 0 touchdowns receiving. Once again, that is not his wheelhouse. But I know some people will look at the 5 touchdowns and say to themselves, well, TJ, I mean, all he had was 5 touchdowns, averaging 4.6 yards a clip. if you followed the Seattle Seahawks throughout the season, which I'm pretty sure a lot of Saints fans kind of did sporadically, Kenneth Walker was still running the ball effectively. They would get down to the goal line, and then all of a sudden, Zach Charbonnet would get the ball for a 1 or 2 yard touchdown. That's just how it worked. You know, Mark Ingram, former New Orleans Saint, even made a comment about that. He said, if I was Kenneth Walker, I would be upset that I carried the team down to the goal line only for Zach Charbonnet to bring it in for a touchdown. And that was a reoccurring thing that happened in Seattle quite a bit. Kenneth Walker's numbers when it comes to a touchdown, rushing touchdowns, probably would have been a lot more if the Seattle Seahawks didn't just take him off the field and put Zach Charbonnet out there for him to run it in for 2 yards out. So at the end of the day, Kenneth Walker's numbers would be a lot better if he was more featured in certain situations, especially in the red zone. And then you have Travis Etienne, played in all 17 games as well, 260 attempts, 1,107 yards, 4.3 yard average, 7 rushing touchdowns, 36 receptions, 292 yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. That is absolutely insane. That is a high rate of receiving touchdowns based on the number of catches that he had. So Travis Etienne having a really good season, magical season, one of his best seasons of his career on last season. So at the end of the day, if you are the New Orleans Saints, neither one of these guys you can go wrong with, neither one of them. So if I'm the Saints, I'm trying to go after one of these dynamic running backs if I know for a fact that I can't get a guy that I want in the NFL draft. You go ahead and read some of your comments here, and we'll go ahead and go from there. Say, hell no, TJ, I'm sorry. Nope. So Huncho is not a fan of going after these running backs, right? We also have Trey giving a shout out to the Who Dat Nation. All right, we got let me see. Trill says, TJ, I think the Saints take a free agent running back if Jeremiah Love doesn't fall to 8. Well, look, you're going to have to get a running back before the NFL draft starts if you're really serious about it, because if you don't, then you're not going to end up getting a highly touted free agent running back. This is something that the Saints are going to have to investigate. If they feel that Jeremiah Love will be there for them at 8, or I don't see this happening, but if the Saints decide to trade up, maybe with Arizona or something like that, in order for them to move to that spot, if they felt that Jeremiah Love was worth that investment, you'll have to do something like that. But if not, you're going to have to make a decision, and you're going to have to make a decision very, very soon. You know, you're not going to be able to beat around the bush or try to prolong the process here. You're going to have to go out and try to make something happen. And if you don't, then another team is going to go ahead and snatch them up. And then you're going to be on the outside looking in. You know, so me personally, as much as I like Jeremiah Love, you have to think about the fact that the Saints are in a rebuilding process. They're in a process of rebuilding this team. They're in a process of growing this team. You know, so are you going to sit up here and try to go after after a running back and invest that type of capital in them? I don't think the Saints are in that position. Now, if the Saints were a team that was vying for a championship, if they were a team that was going after it, making things happen, like they're running back away from winning a Super Bowl, then, hey, you know, have at it. But the Saints have bigger fish to fry. They got bigger fish to fry, man. So at the end of the day, do you want to sit up here and do something like that? I mean, I wouldn't. You know, I wouldn't do that. So that's, you know, that I think that you will have to like do something, maybe, you know, maybe like I said, just go in free agency or trust the running backs that you actually have in the room. You know, that's something that maybe you can consider. Drummer says, I'd rather save the money and draft Love and address other needs. That's a good point right there. Like, you know, addressing certain needs, you know, are important. Like, I think that the New Orleans Saints, you know, I bet if you ask anybody in the front office, they'll tell you, the Saints have other needs, and you don't want to just exhaust that. As much as I like Jeremiah Love, I think that he's a generational talent, and I'm pretty sure the Saints feel the same way as the other 31 teams do. They're not going to invest that type of capital. They're not at that level yet. Can't have a talented running back and old line that can't block worth a damn. KB, you're right. And that's one of the reasons why you want to invest in this offensive line as well. And you want to draft the offensive lineman. I'm pretty sure that's maybe what the Saints would do, draft the offensive lineman and also sign one in free agency. Because if you've been looking, there's a lot of offensive linemen that have been released by their respective teams or will be released. At the start of the off season, when the full season starts back next week. Outside of Love, the guy from Arkansas looks pretty good. Yeah, I mean, man, I like that kid, man. And the one thing that I like is the fact he actually ran a better 40 than Jeremiah Love did. He ran a 4.33, and man, we seen how emotional he was when he ran that 40. That was a guy who, worked his entire life for that moment. And you can just see the emotion in his eyes, man, the way that, that how much it meant to him, that he was able to run that 40. And, he's a big guy. He's about 220 some odd pounds. And, running that fast, that's pretty remarkable, man. And, the talk when I was, at the combine talking with reporters, they were saying like, he doesn't look fast, but when you look at him, like running away from SEC type talent, like you got to sit up there and give him the respect. Mike Washington Jr. is his name. He's a guy that could be a really good, solid running back in the National Football League. And look, the way that the NFL is structured, you got third round, fourth round picks that are starting running backs in the league, because we know that most teams don't draft running backs in the first round. They look at them as an expendable and, and we all know as a devalued position. Look, I apologize that I'm not on camera right now. I'm having some camera issues. I know it looks like pretty lag and delayed. Yeah, and Jerry, I agree. Maybe I don't know if it's time for a new laptop. I mean, I haven't had this laptop. I had this laptop maybe like a year and a half. I just think that it's too full right now, and I probably have to I have to take the time out to remove some things. Like I said, when you have like all these old clips and you combine like the work that I do at the radio station with it and pictures and all that kind of stuff adds up, and it causes your laptop, unfortunately, to kind of drag a little bit. So I do apologize, man, but I didn't want to have to cut the show short or basically have to, like, in the middle of the show, have to restart my computer, and if it continues to kind of lag a little bit, I might have to do that, but I do apologize. But hopefully on the next episode, I'll have the situation resolved. TJ, can you have all the speed in the world? Looks like Tarzan played like Jane. Yeah, I mean, look, we know guys, in the past that had speed, like guys like Darius Hayward Bay. I know some of y'all may know what I'm talking about. Some of you may not. But he was a guy who ended up getting drafted by the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken. Al Davis, God rest his soul, ended up drafting Darius Hayward Bay because he ran a 4.2 in the 40. And he ended up getting drafted before like some really highly touted wide receivers. And, credit to Hayward Bay, like he played in the league for quite some time, but he never really lived up to that top 10 moniker. So guys are like fast and, that's great, but can you play fast, right? Can you be in and out of your routes? Or are you out there thinking way too much? If you're out there thinking way too much, you're not in the playbook, then guess what? Like, you'll never be able to unlock your full potential because you're thinking too much. You're thinking about where I need to be on the field, what route I need to run, what's the check, what I need, what I need to check into, blah, blah, blah. like it confuses you to a point where, you can't play the way that you want to. So, like you can't unlock or, tap into that particular, potential if you playing slow, plain and simple. Says, or get a flash drive to add your computer file. I actually have a flash drive. I got one. I got one that has like a couple terabytes on it. Now I said it's just a matter of like sitting down and dragging that stuff over, man. And that's something that I want to do. It's something I thought I would be able to do yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to get around to it. And like I said, I mean, if I was to press it right now, it's pretty much lagging. I'm trying not to look at myself because I don't want to throw myself off, like when when I'm on camera, like because I'm like maybe at a 2 or 3 second delay. So, you know, let's see. One of the reasons the position is so devalued is you can get talented late like AK. No one knew he would have this type of career. Yeah, nobody knew he would have this type of career. Nobody would believe that he is, what he end up being. But look, when you have those generational guys, like you got to make exceptions to that. And that's why I made a video today when I was talking about how teams, look at some of these running backs and these safeties, and they say, oh, this isn't the traditional top 10 pick, because you got to find a place for him. Well, when a guy is special, they're special. It's like saying, okay, I said this yesterday. It's like having Mitch Richmond on your team, like back in the 90s, and saying, oh, I don't need Mitch Richmond. I got Michael Jordan. Or, excuse me, I don't need Michael Jordan. I got Mitch Richmond. Like, man, you can use Michael Jordan, right? Like that's just how it goes. Like, if you're a head coach, you're trying to stay around. If you're a general manager, you're trying to stay around. So when it all comes down to it, you're trying to find the best team possible. You're trying to find the best players possible in order for you to be able to keep your job. TJ, who are your top 3 sleepers in the draft? My top 3 sleepers in the draft. King Arthur, I'm going to start with my guy, Sam Roush out of Stanford. He's a tight end. And look, I understand about Shadik, and he running what, a 4.3 or 4.4 and all that kind of stuff, freakish athlete. But I'm going to tell y'all this. The Saints already got a F tight end, and that is Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson is the receiving tight end for the New Orleans Saints. He's a guy that can catch the ball for you, but he is not the best blocker. We know that Juwan Johnson started his career with the Saints as a wide receiver, and they end up transitioning him to the tight end position. If you get a guy like Sam Roush, he will be a Y for you. He is a guy who is not afraid to block. He will help out in a run game, and he is very underrated as a receiving tight end. And this is what the Saints need, a all-around tight end. Not somebody that's been around for a long period of time, someone that's flirting with 30, right? It seems the Saints are trying to trend in a direction of getting younger players. So get a guy like Sam Roush. That's my number 1 sleeper. Like, that would be a great addition. I think Saints fans will like him. I think that they will love, well, scratch that. They will love him because of how passionate he is. He's a smart football player. Like I said, he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's not afraid to do the little things that tight ends do in order to make the running game successful. That is what Sam Roush brings to the table. Another player that I feel like is a sleeper is Malik Muhammad out of Texas. This guy has so much confidence in himself, so much so that people thought he was absolutely insane when he said that he was a combination of Revis and Deion Sanders. As crazy as that sounds, the fact that he was willing to go to the podium and have that type of confidence in himself and follow it up with a really solid combine performance is a plus. Malik Muhammad, the cornerback out of Texas, could be available to the New Orleans Saints. He's probably going to be like maybe a second or a third round pick. And if the New Orleans Saints are talking about maybe possibly moving on from Alontae Taylor. If the market is way too rich for their blood, they can get someone like Malik Muhammad to be able to come in and add a spark and add a little bit of juice to the secondary. And he's a guy that can get his hands on a football and make some plays for you. And number 3, we already mentioned him, Mike Washington out of Arkansas, a guy who ran a 4.33, 222 pounds, 6'1", and I seen him in person, man. I mean, this guy's built like a tank, and he's a soft-spoken guy. He was very humbled by the whole combine invite, and I know he's gonna have a chip on his shoulder. So let me tell y'all why I feel like he's gonna have a chip on his shoulder. At the combine, they have podiums, right? They got about, I say 8 podiums where guys step up to the podium and they talk. Mike Washington was on the side. Like, if you weren't like in the middle of the area, you wouldn't even seen him. And it was to a point where you only had like a handful of reporters over there talking to him. And a friend of mine who covers the Giants, I was just finishing up. Who was I can't remember. I think I was talking to Jeremiah Love. It was right after I asked Jeremiah Love a question. I end up like leaving the area because how the combine is basically set up, they bring like so many players out at one time. So if you spend too much time at one spot, you might lose the opportunity to talk to X, Y, and Z. So he was like, man, Mike Washington over there on the side, they don't really have too many people over there. And this guy could be a sleeper, right? And I'm like, Mike Washington, so he was over there on the side, man. So I hate to say it, but you can kind of tell how the NFL kind of feels about certain players and how they feel like their career is going to go based on the podium position. If you're a primary guy, they'll put you front row center. If they feel like, yeah, you might be some, might not be some, slide them over there to the side. And Mike Washington, he was just happy to be a part of the process. And that type of stuff puts a chip on your shoulder. And like I said, he was extremely emotional when he ran that 40. And I think that he definitely could be a sleeper. He can go to a team and be a feature back. He can be that guy that people are talking about, like, man, who's a really good running back in the National Football League 3-4 years from now, and they can probably be mentioning his name. A workman-like running back, a guy who can make some things happen and runs with a level of power that a lot of teams wish that their running backs run with. So, yes, I think that those are my 3 sleepers. Greg says, TJ, who will you pick at 8 best player still available? Look, I'm picking the best player still available in a position of need if I'm a general manager, which I am not, right? But if I was a general manager and if I were to have the number 8 pick, then I would roll with the best player available at the position of need. That's what you need to do. If you do that, then I think you'll be fine. You can't go wrong with getting the best player available. What's good, brother TJ? Do you see us making a splash in free agency? I see the Saints making a splash in free agency. I do. I feel like the Saints can make a splash, and they have some money they can play with versus, not having much money in years past. So, yeah, I think they can make a splash. I think they're going to get somebody that the NFL would consider like a top free agent acquisition. Should we get Lattimore back, we won that trade. Yeah, the Saints definitely won that trade. They won the trade, no doubt about that. If the Saints want to bring Marshawn Lattimore back, I wouldn't have an issue with that. I don't think they would have an issue with that, right? Is he the same cornerback that he was in years past? No, he is not. But he's a guy who is well respected among players in the National Football League for the years that he has played the cornerback position at a high level. And look, I don't care what anybody says about Marshawn Lattimore, the best New Orleans Saints cornerback in the history of the franchise. That's my opinion, because I've never seen a cornerback as much football as I have watched growing up in New Orleans. I've never seen a New Orleans Saints cornerback shut down a field like Lattimore did more consistently than Lattimore did. So if he does have something left in the tank, you can bring him back. But the question is, would they bring him back? Because I think Saints fans are looking at it from a nostalgic standpoint. But you have to ask yourself this question. What does Kellen Moore have in common with a Marshawn Lattimore? What does he have in common? Like, he didn't draft Marshawn Lattimore. He doesn't understand the rapport that the Saints organization had with Marshawn Lattimore. He doesn't, like, that's not his guy. So maybe Saints fans will want it. But, I mean, Kellen Moore doesn't have, like, any type of emotional, like, connection to Marshawn Lattimore. If the Bears were to sign Marshawn Lattimore, it would be more understandable because Dennis Allen is there. If he goes to the Denver Broncos, like, it would make more sense because Sean Payton is there. If he was to go to the Jets, it would make more sense because Aaron Glenn is there. But to say that, okay, the Saints should bring him back, they'll just be bringing him back for the simple fact that he played for the Saints. And, they feel like he has something left in the tank, but this is Kellen Moore's team now. This is Kellen Moore's team. Like, he doesn't have that type of connection. The fans have the connection with Lattimore, but, this isn't your Sean Payton-led New Orleans Saints team. TJ, which position do you think is underratedly needed? Punter. Punter? I want guard, everybody kind of know that, but punter is. The Saints need to have a punting competition. I think they would admit that they need a punting competition. Kai Kroger had one of the lowest averages for a punter last season, and that's not good. And when we're talking about special teams, you got to be able to flip the field. You got to be able to put your defense in a really good position to be able to get a stop, to get the ball back to the offense. Punter is the most underrated position of need for the New Orleans Saints because I mentioned this on shows in the past. The punting, the offensive line is a position that nobody really pays that much attention to unless it is not living up to expectations. So punter, because I don't think it get more underrated than talking about special teams or a punter. But yes, that is what I would go with. Because everybody would tell you, the Saints need to look at getting younger at linebacker. The Saints need to think about getting a running back. The Saints need to think about adding to their wide receiver room. Like, everybody would basically tell you the same thing. But I think that most people wouldn't start a conversation talking about the Saints need a punter. I feel they should sign a guard in free agency because if they draft a guard in the later rounds, you're going to have to re-sign one of the tackles, and you'll have two offensive linemen hitting free agency at the same time. Look, I agree with you, but it's from a different perspective. I agree with you when I say that they need to sign a guard. The New Orleans Saints need to sign a guard. I agree with you on that. But they need to sign a guard, and we need to, if you are the Saints, consider getting a younger guard on the team. You need to consider bringing in a guard that can develop. Maybe it's someone that you don't see as being a starter right now, but let's just say you sign a guard and you sign them to a 2 or 3 year deal. Well, if you are trying to renegotiate a deal and you have a young, around the time he starts to develop, 25, 26-year-old offensive guard that you can slide into that spot because he spent the last couple of years probably coming on the field sporadically, but now he's ready to start, you have leverage. You don't want to be one of those teams that don't have a backup plan. The Saints have had history over the last 4 to 5 years and not being able to keep their offensive line healthy. So you need to learn from your history or you're doomed to repeat it. So signing a free agent guard would probably be best, as well as drafting one that you feel has a lot of promise. I don't know if y'all talked about him yet, but TJ, how do you feel about Wake Forest running back that didn't really get any love from reporters, but he still held his head high? Look, man, that happens. I want to say this. That happens in the draft. That happens in the draft so much during the process. Guys go out there and they make people believe that they can make things happen. And look, if you go out there and you ball out, right? If you go out there and make some things happen, like if Demond Claiborne goes out there and make things happen, then guess what? Like that just provides a big chip on his shoulder. It goes back to what I was talking about with Mike Washington. Mike Washington was unheralded. Guy went out there, ran a 4.33, ran a faster time than the top running back in the draft class. He made people recognize him, acknowledge that he was there. So look, Claiborne is going to have to, do some work. And, according to his draft projections, if I'm not mistaken, he's projected to be like a 4th or 5th round pick. But we know, like we can make a list of 3rd and 4th round running backs that come in and have made a name for themselves somewhere. They may not be a household name, but they probably contribute, and been a 1-2 punch for a feature back or even became a featured back. So look, let that be a chip on your shoulder. If he can come in there and make a name for himself and make some noise, then people are going to be like, that's going to be his story. I think the Saints need to package the 1 this year and 2 and 3 this year and a 2 next year. Package them for what? What are they trying to do? What do you want to package them for? Say Claiborne is a decent running back. Yeah, he good. But some people, kind of looked at, his size. Some people kind of, looked at, like he's 188, 200, 180, 190 pounds. It's kind of small. What are you, about 5'10"? That's not a guy that teams are looking at like, oh man, this guy can be every down back. So, like I said, he can go in, get drafted in the 4th or the 5th round, align with a really good running back room, and still make some noise. I did a mock where Styles, Love, Downs, Lemon, and Baines were still on the board. Who are you taking? I lean towards Styles. I'm taking Jeremiah Love, if that's the case. But I would have to know what website you're on, because some websites they generate these drafts, but they don't account for the analytics and the improvements of things that have happened. Rather, it's a pro day, rather it's a combine performance. They don't do that. So that's probably why all those guys were there. I'm going to give you the order. I'm going to give you the order. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull it up again. I'm going to pull it up again for you. Okay, so you said Styles, Love, Downs, Lemon, and Bain. All right, here it is. Love, Styles, Downs, Bain, Lemon. That's my order. That would be my order. I'm going to say that again. Love, Styles, Downs, Bain, Lemon. Here's why. I would take Jeremiah Love because he's a generational talent. Sonny Styles because he's a smart guy. He's a good, high character guy. He's a leader. And if you're going to replace someone like DeMario Davis in the next couple of years, whether it's next year or a year after, you rather have somebody be able to pick up the bloodstained banner, so to speak, someone that kind of fits that mold, and you don't have to worry about getting a phone call because this guy got arrested at 2 a.m. You look at a guy like Caleb Downs, the best player in the draft on a lot of people's draft board. And the Saints aren't as, they're not as set at safety just because you got some guys that can give you stability to a point where I don't think they could afford to bring in a guy like Caleb Downs. Ruben Bain to me is, someone that is going to give you that Cam Jordan type energy, right? He's never going to quit on a play. He's going to be able to stop the run, and, he's going to be extremely disruptive. And he's going to be a guy that's going to be in a community. He's going to have 10 toes down, and he cares about football. He loves football. So you don't have to worry about if this guy going to give up on you. Is this guy going to quit on plays? You don't have to worry about that. And then Mekhi Lemon, I'm picking him last. No disrespect to him, but I don't think the Saints are as needy at wide receiver as people think they are. They got a lot of talent on this team. So with that being said, I don't think that it's to a point where the New Orleans Saints have to act in desperation. I don't understand Bain hype. He's a football player, Dalton. He's a football player. Look, sometimes guys just love the game, right? I mean, they're not going to have all these different crazy measurables. They're not going to run these crazy 40s. They're not going to, just jump over somebody's head, jump over a pile. They're just going to do their job and do it well. Everybody knows somebody at their job like that. Somebody probably is listening to this, probably embodies that personality. I'm not going to make no waves, you're going to know I'm there by the work that I put in. And that is what Ruben Bain is. He's a solid worker. He's a guy you can count on that is going to be down on Sunday to do his job. And that there is nothing wrong with that. We want to marvel at the majesty of these guys. Oh, look at the measurables. Look at the speed. Look at this, that, and the third. But sometimes a good, solid football player can be enough. And he can be a fan favorite. He can be a guy that people feel like, man, he hurt. Oh, my goodness, man, we ain't got a chance today. And he's not going to have Javon Curse type freakish abilities or some of these other guys that come in. He's not running a 4-4. He ain't got no insane freakish look about himself. He just does his job and does it well. And that's cool. That's cool, man. We watch these podcasts, we watch these mock drafts, and we feel like everybody has to be this super hybrid, super soldier. Like they just took the super serum that Captain America took. Hey, don't take that. If we want to keep it a buck, people weren't talking about Cam Jordan like that in the 2011 draft. Everybody probably thought Cam Jordan, pretty solid guy, right? Pretty solid, really good run stopper, can stop the run, not a real big pass rush guy. Cam Jordan emerged to become what he is looked at today. He wasn't that. But who if the Saints man, ain't nothing special on him. We go ahead and move on to somebody else. Would they have had the all-time leader in sacks for the New Orleans Saints? That is the question. So sometimes it's not going to be sexy, right? I'm just doing my job. I'm just handling up on my business. I'm just going to do what I need to do in order for me to make things happen. And that's it. That's it. And that's what Ruben Bain provides. That's what he provides, man. Man don't care about nothing but football. Yeah, I mentioned this. Scott came to the podium, looked like he just finished working out. Yeah, I mean, no fresh haircut, no diamond studded chain like he just stopped by Johnny Dang. None of that. Man just came there with the simple thought of being selected by going through the interview process and showing his love for football. And what really matters to him the most is him playing football and putting a real product on the field that a team can invest in. Guys like that, like Brandon Graham, that's another guy who Ruben Bain is being compared to. And I think we all can agree that Brandon Graham has had an amazing career. What's shucking, TJ? What's your thoughts about the offense and the defense are going to get in the direction on the field in 2026? For real, for real. I don't care about the sports media saying about our team in the last 5 years. Look, that means nothing in the grand scheme of things, Jeremiah. It doesn't matter what the sports reporters are saying, the mainstream media is saying. It's about what you put out there on the field. And look, the New Orleans Saints have had some struggles over the last 5 years. Post Breeze, it has not been ideal. But you can change all that by coming in, putting your hand to the plow, and putting that work in. Make people believe in you. Make people want to talk about you. But in the meantime, like, there's nothing really to talk about. What are we talking about? Not talking about much. I believe I was on NFL mock draft database because I don't want to pay for PFF. Yeah, I ain't paying for that. I ain't paying for that either. Look, I just watched the tape. I just watched the tape and just kind of analyze it from there, right? I'm not trying to pay so I can simulate a draft. Oh, you get an A for your effort. Okay, thank you very much. Based on what? You know, based on what? Why would Saints target a running back if everybody wants them to draft Love? Well, here's the thing, Aaron. Everybody wants them to draft Love, but that means nothing in the grand scheme of things. Because Jeremiah Love, there's a possibility that he may not be there at 8. I know, look, I love myself some Mel Kiper. Phil Yates, shouts out to him. Seen him at the combine, seemed like a nice guy. But those guys don't know everything. And if you look at the mock draft, the Saints could get Jeremiah Love at 8. They don't know, like, man, he could be drafted by the Tennessee Titans. He could be drafted by the Giants. He could be drafted by the Cardinals. There's endless possibilities. You do not know what teams are going to do. You can have an idea. You can look at the season that they had. You can look at the analytics. You can look at what they lack. You can look at what is missing, what is not special about their team, who is a role guy. You can do all those things and say, I come to the conclusion that this team will do X, Y, and Z and be as wrong as rain on draft night. That is why when people make opinions and comments, and if I tweet or if somebody else tweets and say, I think the Saints should do this, and it doesn't happen, well, you said, well, we don't know. You do it based on what the availability is. Like, you're not Nostradamus. Look, I guarantee you, and I guarantee you who are listening to this right now, whether you're in the chat or at home or wherever you are, if you knew what the Saints were going to do, the Jets was going to do, or any other of these 31 other teams in the NFL other than the Saints would do, I guarantee you wouldn't be up here listening to me right now. You would go to Vegas and cash in. The Jets going to do this, Raiders going to do this, and look, take my whole check. I'm putting my whole check down because I'm about to flip it and I'm about to be paid. Nobody knows. So when people say, oh, you supposed to, yeah, look, I'm supposed to do what? Know everything? Like, you look at the team and you break it down and you say, you know what? They did struggle in this department. They have been struggling in this department. I have noticed that said player hasn't been up to snuff. Maybe they need to go in a different direction. We put all of that information into consideration to formulate our opinion. I guarantee you, if I knew what the Saints were going to do on a week-by-week basis, covering this football team for about 9 seasons now on the State of the Saints podcast. I guarantee you, I would be recording this podcast from a multi-million-dollar location because I would have cashed in. I would have got that Skrilla. Do you hear me? I would have got that Skrilla. I would have been like, if you ever seen Back to the Future Part 2, when Biff stole the almanac, went into the past and gave it to himself. Shoot, I would be Biff right now. Shoot, miss me with that. Like, we all are just trying to, come up with logical explanations as to why this or that will happen. Sometimes you get it right. Sometimes you get it wrong. It is what it is. It depends on the draft board to see how it goes. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. Like I said, Slim, if you did, bro, I would be like, Slim, let me hold something. Let me hold a couple thou, bro. That's what I would be doing. If Jeremiah Love is going to draft pick at number 8 on our team in NFL, TJ, NFL draft, TJ, Saints fans are going to be surprised or reaction about him or going nuts. They're going to lose their freaking mind. They're going to lose their freaking mind, man, if that's the case. Would you trade to get back into the first round? Would I trade to get back into the first round if I was a general manager? I ain't used this in
hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no, hell to the no, to the no, no, no.
Nah, you stay where you at, man. You stay where you at. You don't try to go up here, man, and try to get back in the first round. What you going back in the first round for? What you trying to get? What you stay where you at, man. Stay where you at. Stay where you at. And stay where you at. You got some prime position, right? You're picking number 8 in the first round. You picking number 8 in the second round. So guess what? You're going to get a top 40. You're going to get a top 40. You know what I'm saying? So there's no need to do that, man. I haven't hit the bishop in a minute, man. I didn't hit the bishop in a minute, man. So I had to do it. I had to do it. Yeah, man. Rest in peace to Bishop Bowinkle, man. Yeah, but I don't feel like there's a need to try to come back into the first round. Unless like you see something that you can possibly grab and it really doesn't cost you anything. But at this point, the New Orleans Saints need to be focused on one thing, and that is rebuilding the team through the draft and playing their cards right, doing what you need to do in order to get your team younger, more explosive, and trending in the right direction. Someone please explain to me why some of the Saints fans, if they are Saints fans, want a receiver instead of Love with the 8th pick. I don't know. Look, it's subjective at the end of the day, Dalton. We have to understand that. Everybody has their opinions and feel very strong about their opinions because nobody want to feel like anybody walked them to that opinion. But you have to understand others have opinions too. And although many are in love, no pun intended, with Jeremiah Love, there are many who feel the New Orleans Saints need to draft a wide receiver, or they need to go after a safety, or they need to get Sonny Styles. And the answer to that is, yeah, they need all of that, and they can use all of that, right? But, I mean, if they was to add a receiver, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Too much talent on the top 10 to trade back. You trade back and let your draft board just like, man, what I'm looking at, I know going to be there at such and such number. But yeah, there's no need to trade back. Now, shouts out to Jacob Hester and Matt Flynn I was listening to them while I was in the school line picking up Pac. For those that don't know, Paxton is my 6-year-old son. So I'm waiting in the line as, waiting for him to get out. And I was checking out Jacob Hester. And shouts out to Jacob Hester, man. Nice enough to give me an interview at the combine. But Matt Flynn said that this would be a good year for the New Orleans Saints to trade back. And although it wouldn't be a bad idea, I don't feel like it's necessary because the Saints have so many glaring holes that they can pick anyone, it will make sense. So you got the number 8 pick in the draft, you got the 8 pick in the second round, so you're gonna get 2 really high value players if you play your card right. Right? If you don't try to go and try to recreate Richard Sherman and draft a Stanley Jean-Baptiste or something, or Isaiah Foskey, 2 players that didn't work out for your franchise. If you don't do that, then you should be fine. TJ, you beat me to the punch. Heck no, we ain't 1 pick away. You're not. You do that kind of stuff, James, if you flirting with the playoffs, maybe jumping back in, may win you a Super Bowl or something. Like the Saints, getting Ryan Ramczyk or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Or something like, okay, it makes sense. That makes sense, right? Ryan Ramczyk ended up being a really good right tackle until, unfortunately, his body just gave up on him. Right? You jump back in the first round to snatch him up after you got Marshawn Lattimore. Worked out. Both players worked out. Really good draft class. Love will not be at ATJ. Too much hype, bro. Too much hype. Too good of a performance at the combine. Plain and simple. Too much of a good performance at the combine. Way too good. Way, way, way too good. And for those that don't know, reason I ain't on camera right now because my camera has a little bit of delay, a little bit of a glitch. So it's a little bit behind. That's the reason why I'm not on camera, and I apologize. I'll try to get that issue resolved. Addison says, what up, TJ? Been a minute. What's going on, Addison? Appreciate you for being here. Has been a minute. I'm glad you're doing okay. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you. It was reported that Downs was flagged with a knee issue. Did you hear about it at the combine, TJ? No, I can't say that I did. I didn't hear anything about a knee issue. I didn't hear anything about a flag either. But what I did hear was, he's a safety and safeties don't go that high. If we redraft the draft where Kyle Hamilton came out of Notre Dame and he was a top 5 pick, who gonna debate that? Who gonna debate that? If you know what you know now about Kyle Hamilton and he gets picked in the top 5, are you complaining about it? No. This is why I've been asking, who created these 10 commandments of the draft? Who is Moses Kiper around this thing? That's why I want to know who gave the 10 commandments of the draft. Because I see outliers all the time. I see guys who beat the odds and they just really good football players. So these cardinal sins that they feel like you commit because you're not doing things the conventional way, well, maybe some teams need to practice unconventional draft practices because they find themselves picking in the top 10 quite often. Do they not? I mean, we know them. They're very familiar. It's like Cheers. Everybody knew their name, right? Walk through the door. Norm, right? Frazier. Everybody knew your name, right? So when it comes to the draft, some of these top 5, top 10 teams is like an episode of Cheers. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, seriously, everybody knows their name. Jets. Browns, Raiders. Come on, man. Like, we know their names. Say their names and they appear. Everybody know their names. So what are we talking about here, man? Maybe they need to practice unconventional practices of the draft. And maybe we wouldn't see them as often as we do, picking in the top 5 and a fan base wallowing in misery because things aren't working their way. Maybe that's the case. Like, sometimes you got to switch the game up, right? What that boy Kanye said, 50 told me go ahead and switch the styles up. And if they hate, then let them hate. Then watch the money pile up. Let them hate. Oh, man, you don't supposed to do this. You don't supposed to draft no Caleb Downs. Watch Caleb Downs become an all-pro more times than not. Oh, man, you don't supposed to draft the all-ball linebacker in Sonny Styles. Watch this guy turn into the next Fred Warner. Like, come on, man. What are we doing here, man? Why are we trying to live up to these cliches when these outliers are proven like to be exactly, like becoming a norm? For example, Michael Parsons. Michael Parsons has short arms. We're having a conversation about Ruben Bain's arm length. We're having a conversation about Ruben Bain's arm length when Michael Parsons, I believe, had 32-inch arms. And who wouldn't want Michael Parsons right now? Seriously, like, I know he's coming off an injury, but that dude is a beast when he on that field. Like, what are we talking about here, man? Usual suspects in the top 5, top 10, but they want to sit up here and tell you what they not going to draft. Like, seriously, man, you ought to be like, homie, on Don't Be a Menace to South Central, right? Like, desperate. You know what I'm saying? Please, man. Like, that's what you need to be on. Anything. Put me on. Like, I don't know. Like, the arrogance of some of these teams. Like, how can you tell me how to maintain my marriage if you can't keep a marriage? How can you tell me how to fix my car and you don't know a gas tank from an oil stick? Like, are we serious here? You're telling me what you're not going to draft, what the draft says, what the customs have been, and your team picking in the top 5, top 10 every single year. Pass on to Sonny Styles because he's an off-ball linebacker. Pass on to Jeremiah Love because he's a running back. You don't supposed to draft him in the first round. And watch he come to your division and have about 10, 15 tackles if you're Sonny Styles, run for about 150 yards if you Jeremiah Love, and catch an interception and put the hit stick on your star wide receiver if you Caleb Downs. Watch it happen. Watch it happen. What we not going to draft? What you don't supposed to draft? Man, great players are great players. You find ways to use great players. If you're a basketball coach and I say, man, I got this 7-foot kid. He can't shoot very, very well, but guess what? Man, he averages about 17 rebounds a game. Put his big behind underneath the rim. Oh, he can't shoot a 3 for me. But your team lasts in rebounds. Like, what are we doing? Put that big brother out there. Put him out there. You find a place for great players. I can't believe it's this hard. I cannot. I don't know if it's just for entertainment purposes. I don't know if it's just because they want to create back and forth Twitter banter, X banter, TikTok banter, Instagram banter. I don't know what it is, but I don't want to believe that it is that hard to do the right thing. If somebody shows you he a beast in college, if a guy's showing you he a beast at the combine, he shows you he a beast at the pro day, and your deal breaker is, well, I called his mama and the voicemail came on. Well, I don't know if he's at home or not. Like, what? Man, look here, like this crazy, ridiculous stuff. Well, I heard he had 2 left feet and he lost in a dance competition. Who cares? I ain't asking this man to be Fred Astaire. I'm asking this guy to go out there and make some plays. Like they talk they talk themselves out of drafting great players. What are we doing, man? And what is going on, man? It shouldn't be that hard to draft no great player, man. For real. If the kid can ball, then let him ball, plain and simple. Thank you. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science, James. Come on. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's intentionally done. I don't. I don't know if it's intentionally done just to have something to talk about. I know this is downtime between off-season activities and the draft. So if people got to keep this content wheel rolling, but man, I ain't trying to make ish out of thin air. I am not. Like, you like a guy, do your due diligence. If he pans out, he checks all the boxes, make it happen. I heard he used to suck his thumb when he was in the 3rd grade. Yeah, like just crazy stuff, Pam. Crazy stuff, Pammy. Like, it's just crazy. Like, people trick themselves off the block. They trick themselves off the block. I'm going to take a few more, then we can go ahead and get up out of here. Thank y'all for being here tonight, bearing with me as I'm dealing with these technical difficulties. Appreciate your time. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe. Help the channel to grow. Check out the content that's available on Bleacher Report. I don't know if y'all know this or not. You can catch the State of the Saints podcast on Yahoo Sports as well. Little clips of the show. If you may not want to sit here and listen to all 1 hour and 7 minutes of it, you can catch it in snippets on Yahoo Sports. So make sure y'all check it out. Make sure y'all check it out, man. But goes back to our original thought, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne. Wouldn't go wrong with those guys, especially since you have Alvin Kamara. Can be a really good 1-2 punch. Question is, would they, being unrestricted free agents, you can kind of call your shots. You can kind of point where you want to go. You can kind of dictate your own fate. You haven't had this opportunity since you've been in college, basically, right? A team that draft you, that may not have been your first choice, but they draft you, right? So this is the first time since high school going into college where you get opportunity to decide where you go. So you have to ask, like, would Kenneth Walker want to share the backfield with Alvin Kamara? Would Travis Etienne want to share the backfield with Alvin Kamara? Now, I do want to have this conversation, and we're going to save it for the next episode. We got to talk about Alontae Taylor. Got to talk about Alontae Taylor and his contract. You know, if you look at some reports, some people have Alontae Taylor to receive possibly up to $20 million. You know, is it worth the investment? We'll talk about that in detail on the next episode because we're wrapping it up, and I feel like it involves a longer conversation. So I'll save that for the next episode. But I do want to say thank you for checking out this episode of the State of the Saints podcast. Once again, my name is TJ Jones. Please subscribe to the channel, help the channel to grow. Previous episodes available right here on YouTube. You can also follow me on X at TJAYJones8. All right, make sure that you follow me on X. You tweet me, I tweet back. Somebody asked me about Caleb Proctor. I like Caleb Proctor. Probably going to end up being a 3rd round draft pick. Could be there for the New Orleans Saints if they wanted to draft him. Southeastern guy, high motor, high character guy. You won't have a problem, won't have an issue with Caleb Proctor. I can guarantee you that. Would be a great addition to any team that he's on. Got opportunity to talk to him at the combine. And, you know, I asked him about, you know, him coming, you know, from a small school and, you know, how would that, you know, like, you know, how has that experience been for him? Like I say, he's a really solid guy, you know, You know, it seems like, you know, he loves his teammates. You know, he loves playing football. So when you have guys like that, like you can't go wrong with that type of talent. Can't go wrong with that type of talent. I think I don't know if I actually have that clip or not on my computer here. I don't know if I have it or not, but yeah, but I mean, he big up his teammates. When I asked him, I said, well, how do you feel about, you know, coming from a small school, Southeastern, and being at the combine? And he just said, I'm just happy to be here. He said, but there's a lot of people that helped me out, got me to this point, and, you know, he appreciate those people. And when you hear stuff like that, man, it's like, man, this guy's made the right stuff. He talking that right talk, as they say. He talking that right talk. You gotta go country with it. He talking that right talk. Yeah, man, but he's a good, he seems like he got a good head on his shoulder, man. So I'm rooting for the guy. I'm rooting for him. I hope that everything works out for him. But make sure that you subscribe to the channel once again. Really do appreciate your time. And until next time, all I got to say is, who that?
TJ Jones, we here. State of the Saints podcast, top notch, everything's top class. Know the play before they snap it. Going forward, never backward.